Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about one of the most important parts of a computer. And we're going to be talking about primary memory or temporary storage. And this is called RAM. RAM stands for Random Access Memory. RAM is stored on the motherboard in modules that are called DIMMs. DIMM stands for Dual Inline Memory Module. A DIMM is a dual inline module because it has two independent rows of these pins, one on each side. A DIMM memory module has either 168, 184, 240, or 288 pins. And then the DIMM is installed on the motherboard in the memory slots. A motherboard can have a various number of memory slots. The average motherboard will have between 2 and 4 of them. In order for data or a program to run on a computer, it needs to be loaded into RAM first. So the data or program is first stored on the hard drive. Then from the hard drive, it's loaded into RAM. And once it's loaded into RAM, the CPU can now access the data or run the program. Now, a lot of times, if the memory is too low, it might not be able to hold all the data that the CPU needs. And when this happens, then some of the data has to be kept on the slower hard drive to compensate for the low memory. So instead of the data going from RAM to the CPU, it has to do extra work by going back to the hard drive. And when this happens, it slows down the computer. So to solve this problem, all you need to do is increase the amount of RAM on a computer, and by increasing the memory, more data can be loaded into the faster RAM without the need of constantly accessing the slower hard drive. And the result is a faster performing computer. So this is why a computer with more RAM performs faster than a computer with less RAM. RAM requires constant electrical power to store data, and if the power is turned off, then the data is erased. RAM also comes in different types, such as dynamic RAM or DRAM. DRAM is memory that contains capacitors. A capacitor is like a small bucket that stores electricity, and it's in these capacitors that holds the bit of information, such as a 1 or a 0, because that's how computers read data, which is ones or zeros. And because DRAM has capacitors, they have to be refreshed with electricity constantly, because capacitors do not hold a charge for very long. They constantly leak. And this refreshing is where we get the name dynamic. The capacitors have to be dynamically refreshed often, otherwise they will forget the information that they're holding. Another type of memory is called SDRAM, which stands for synchronous DRAM. And this type of memory is what is used today in RAM DIMMs. SDRAM also has capacitors like DRAM, but the difference between SDRAM and DRAM is basically speed. The older DRAM technology operates asynchronously with the system clock, which basically means that it runs slower than the system clock, because its signals are not coordinated with it. But SDRAM runs in sync with the system clock, which is why it is faster than DRAM. All the signals are tied to the system clock for a better controlled timing. So as stated before, RAM is stored on the motherboard in modules that are called DIMMs, and these DIMMs come in different memory sizes. Today, they range anywhere from 128 megabytes to 32 gigabytes per DIMM. SDRAM is also rated at different speeds, but before we talk about the speed of RAM, we need to define some things first.